I find a lot of people feel I could never do what you do, or I don't have it in me to become that person. And I'm like, if you could only see the person here, the way he started, because he didn't have it in to become that person either. I think it's mostly self-doubt and self-confidence. That's why I think most people don't take the step is they don't think they're worth it. They don't think they could reach it. They don't think they could become that they're seeing out there. Like I believe firmly anybody could become the next Gary Vee. When I say anybody can become Gary Vee, I don't mean that anybody can rise to the level he did, because the truth is, if so, thousands, we know how many experts are in the world, influencers. If they could all be Gary Vee, they would be. But what I mean when I say you could be there, you could become a Gary Vee, what I mean is you could be influencing people in a similar way. You could be impacting lives. And it doesn't mean you're going to impact millions, but at the same time, if you wanted to put in the soles in the shoes walking work, you might be able to become the next Gary Vee.
Welcome back to the Dana Grant Show, where I am focused on heart-centered conversations with entrepreneurs that are going to expand your life. And I have someone today that you're going to want to know. Corey Poirier, he not only created Blue Talks, he's got a book out that when he told me, The Enlightened Passenger, it lit me up. So I can't wait to dive in and welcome Corey to the show. And thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Dana. I'm super stoked to be here.
Yeah, I can't wait to dive into this conversation. And it's so vast what you do and so deep. And I was looking at my notes and I was circling all over the place. 5-time TEDx speaker. Not only 7,500 of the world's top leaders you have trained and taught. Let's start there. What made you or connected you to not only launching Blue Talks, because that alone, but being connected to this service-based industry in the world?
Wow. So, I mean, it goes back to now, this doesn't necessarily say personally what brought me into it, but it goes back to the fact that I started out as a speaker myself while also
Mm,
working in a corporate role. And the speaking side, I got to see how you could impact lives, change lives.
yeah.
I have people come up after a talk. If I delivered a talk and talked about being raised by a single mother and how
Mm,
close now and stuff, I would have people, single mothers, come up and say, "Thank you for saying that. My son always rebels against me, and I think he's gonna hate me when I get older. But knowing that you and your mom are so close after all the rebelling you did, gives me
yeah.
faith that my son might be the same." And so seeing how you're impacting lives, that I wanted more of that when I started. And then what happened was, as I got further down the path, it became a mission. So I actually wrote my own mission statement. And the mission statement is to be the guy who motivates, donates, educates, inspires, and
Mm,
entertains. And
mm,
so in terms of the service base, I feel it was because I first went out and started serving as a speaker. And you could say, Dana, well, you get paid as a speaker, but when I was first doing it, it was
mm.
like you're either doing it for free or you're paying your own gas to get there. You might get a meal at the event. So I
Yeah,
was service based, really,
yeah,
whether intentionally or not. And then
yeah.
what I saw happen as a result of that service made me want to do more of that. And
Mm,
so that's where the mission statement came from, is because I started realizing everything I was doing that I was enjoying hit those five things I said, donating, motivating, inspiring. And so once I had that mission statement, that I'm going to say, for lack of a better way of saying it, that influenced everything else I've done since, even
right.
to the idea of launching Blue Talks. It was about how can I service experts, speakers, coaches, authors, etc., who are struggling the way I was when I started, which was the struggle of how do you find clients? How do you get paid to speak? How do you find
Right.
bookings? How do you get on media? All that stuff. I
Yeah.
struggled with it, and I knew a lot of people were. So the service became, how can I help these people get their message out to more people, and at the same time impact those more people, while the person's on the stage delivering their message.
Well, you really help people stand out, and in doing that, I mean, I love the fact that you anchored into a mission statement, number one. You started there. I got a mission. I love how it feels up there, helping people, being of service, but I have to make a living out of this too. And Corey, I find that the majority of my clients are professionals, entrepreneurs, and they want to get on the stages. They want to be their desire to speak is, and their frustration. And they've all got a message, a story, a great story. What would you say to them right now, beginning in 2025? They're struggling. They don't know what to do. They're out there. They think they're doing all the things. What would be one thing, or maybe several things you could tell them? Let's not cap it.
Wow. I feel like what I would tell people, and this relates to, I guess, more of the bigger scope as well, not just like, hey,
Right.
start doing this one thing.
Yeah.
I would first want to talk to the person about how they view the way they're going to get more clients, the way they're going to get more attention, the way they're going to get more bookings, the way they're going to get more everything, so that they can impact lives, not for themselves, but so that they can impact more lives. How they're going to do that is by raising their profile. So the first thing I would say is, uh, I kind of changed the term from fake it till you make it to fake it till you feel it. But honestly,
I
I would
like that.
say
Yeah.
really so I know I'm not big on like faking it in the way that you act like you're somebody you're not, like
Yeah.
uh I'm a millionaire when I'm not. But there's a difference between that and finding a way to build instant credibility that's real, but that allows you to be positioned as a higher level than you were a week before. I call it, actually, I'm working on a book called Becoming the Instant Expert, because I believe it can be
Oh,
instant. And what I mean by that, Dana, is there's people that spend 5, 6 years, and when you look at their website, you're still like, who are they? Are they a go-to person? And then there's other
correct.
people, like, I mean, I literally, knowing what I know now, I could get dropped into a new city, and I don't mean this as a me ing thing. It's just I've learned how to do it. But
No,
you could
yeah.
drop me in a new city where nobody knows me, and I could, in the eyes of some people, I could become an expert in a matter of a month. So how would I do that? And this is what the advice I would give people. So how would I do that is the question, right? And so it's looking at what are all the things that position you as an authority. So if I again dropped into a new city, one thing I could do pretty quickly is I could find somebody else that has a compilation book series and say,
Mm.
hey, can I, whether it's investing or not, but can I write a chapter in your book? So the first thing I could do if I wasn't
Mm.
a best-selling author, I could become a best-selling author by writing 1,500 words and submitting it to a chapter. Now, I would try to look for somebody who is maybe on the Barnes and Noble list, because everybody can say Amazon. But if you can say I'm a Barnes and Noble and Amazon bestselling author, it sounds better because it's different. So I would try to get into a book series that could do Barnes and Noble. The next thing I would do is I would reach out to some local podcasts. Let's say I could get on 10 local podcasts in a matter of 2 weeks. Then I would ask them, which everyone's going to say yes, can I use your logo on my As Seen On banner? And I would create an As Seen On banner in those first 2 weeks. And then when you go to my website, it would say As Seen On. Now, these are smaller podcasts. So you would say, well, does it give you credibility? Yes, because 99% of the world doesn't know what a big podcast is these days. So if they
No.
don't know what a big podcast is, all they know is you were vetted by the media. So now I would have an As Seen On banner in a couple of weeks. I'd be in a best-selling book within a very short order. And then on top of that, I would start adding those things to my bio. The As Seen On banner would be on my LinkedIn profile, would be on my Facebook page. So and my email signature is a big one. That's great real estate. Everybody seems to miss. I would
Mm.
also reach out to a local chamber and say, hey, and I would look at their website first, but hey, I see you bring in speakers. And they might not hire them, they probably don't, but you bring in speakers. Normally, I would charge as a speaker, but I'm willing to do a no fee talk at your event. Would you be up to that? If they said yes, I would say, hey, can I hand out my valuation form? And so my evaluation form says things like, do you know of others who could hire you? So I would then get referrals. But another one is, what did you think of the talk today? And can we use that in our marketing? So now all of a sudden I would set up my website and I would have testimonials. And the reason I chose a chamber is because it's separate companies that attend a chamber event. So now
Yeah.
you could have testimonials from 35 companies on your first day, in your first talk. Also, I would film the talk. Now you could do two angles on 4K phone and you have high quality footage you can use. So that's what I would do starting today if you drop me down. So how that answers the question is, if somebody said to me, what do I do starting in 2025? I would do exactly what I just said. I would find a way to get yourself positioned as an expert quicker. And what happens is, I call it the Oscar effect, because whenever Academy Award winning actor wins the Academy Award or gets nominated, what happens? Better scripts, more money per role, more opportunity. And in fact, they did a study and they showed that Oscar winners within a year of winning the Oscar increased their per movie salary by 20%. So think about, just if you're getting $1 million, let's just say, as an actor,
Yeah.
every movie, and let's say you do 3 a year. I'm just throwing numbers out.
Mhm.
And that means you get 20% more. That means 600,000 more per year for the rest of your career, simply by being an Academy Award winning actor. You can do the math
Mm,
in 10 years. That's $6 million
yeah.
more you've made simply by
Yeah.
winning an Academy Award or even being nominated. What I'm saying is I'm suggesting the same principles work. And if people doubt how powerful this is, I would ask you when it comes to the as seen on, why do you think it is if you go to Lisa Nichols' website, if you go to Tony Robbins' website, Gary Vee's, Jay
Yeah.
Shetty's, and I could go on and on. If you go to their
Yeah.
websites, one of the first things you're going to see on every one of them is as seen on.
Mhm.
Trust me, Tony Robbins has spent enough money to know whether that works, and he's still
Yeah.
putting it on the top of his website. So, and
Yeah.
by the way, the last piece I should mention is get those 10 logos of that small podcast first. And then as you start doing this stuff, then when you get on Forbes, you switch out the small logo for the bigger ones. But that's what I would do if you asked me starting today, what's a game plan?
Love that. I love that. It's nice to know that I think we may be doing that, and we just switched out Forbes from this. I think I'm keeping the smaller ones too because I value it all. But you know what I hear you really saying? I mean, I'm listening to the tactics and the strategy, which I friggin' love. I love it. I mean, it just resonates deeply with me, but you're showing up. You're asking for what you want. You're not out there hoping it comes to you and wishing and you're not that relationship with frustration of why is no one not asking me? You're out there hitting the pavement. It reminds me of back when I worked as a sales and lobbyist and my feet would be bloody at the end of the day. And they're like, how do you set records? Because I'm walking from I'm in industrial places. It looks glamorous, and I know the wards look glamorous, but I'm walking and buying shoe stores or Payless shoe stores, plastic shoes, because I'm wearing the bottoms out every week and buying a new pair because I'm I'm out there doing it. And the people that are out there thinking about it and cherry picking doesn't work. It's you're showing up and you're just saying, "Hey, I'm going to show up anywhere I can." I love it. I love it. Do you have like a cheat sheet blueprint that you offer anyone for this kind of like, "Hey, this is what you can do to get yada yada yada."
So technically we do. It's not, it's more of an actual training. And when you said it, I
Love
had
that
to
even more. Love
well,
it
I was
even
trying
more.
to think, what do I have that's the best? Because we have different things we've done over the years. The one
Yeah.
that comes to my mind right away, and I'll give you a website if that's okay, because
Oh,
people could.
absolutely. Yeah, we're going to give all your deets because I'm going to tell you I am inundated right now with people, the same thing. I want to talk more. I want to do, and I noticed the last quarter of the year, a lot of people were really frustrated. They're in masterminds on learning how to speak, and they say, I can't get on the stage. I can't. Well, what are you waiting for? You know, what is it you're not doing? I'm like, tell me what you're doing. Well, what is it you're not doing? Well, I'm waiting. I'm waiting. Well, you're going to keep waiting.
Yeah, people say to me, so they'll say a picture of me up with insert name here, right? Like Deepak Chopra or Tommy Chong or Matthew McConaughey, and they'll say, "You're so lucky." And my answer always is, if you only knew how much work went
It
into
took to get
becoming
there.
lucky. And that goes to your point
Yeah.
about wearing the shoes off, or the holes of the shoes off, soles. But yeah, just so I don't forget to give that website, where I would send people is Blue Talks and You. That's all spelled out. The only difference is Blue doesn't have the E, but it's
Mhm.
bluetalksandyou.com. And if a person goes there, basically it's a landing page where literally you just click to sign up. It takes you to the next page, and then there's a free training you can check out. That's like
I
an app.
actually have that here in blue. Isn't that
Oh, do you?
interesting?
Oh, wow, that's so cool.
I
But
know. Yeah.
it's basically it's the kind of a training, a deep dive into the training, which is kind of like I just share with you in 5 minutes. It's like an hour of that, basically.
Love it. Love it. You know, I love that you broke it down on the logistics of this is what I would do if I went here and this is what and you know, we can all make that happen. I I believe we can all make that happen. If what do they need to do to step out of the what do you find the most that people need to I mean, I always say where you resist, lean in, but what do you think stops people the most from showing up and doing this?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great question. And I feel like the biggest thing that I see, and it's amazing how often I see it, probably because now we help a lot of people become experts. Some are further along, some are just starting. But probably because and we built this with our Blue Talks brand, it's really a family. Like we built this thing where, like,
Mhm.
literally people that we work with sign up once, and 8 years later, like we've been going 4.5 years, but my other stuff we've been doing for 10. We have people sign
Right.
up 10 years ago, paid once. 10 years later, we're still doing twice a year. We do free expert boot camps. We do all these things, and they're always engaging. So it becomes a family. The reason I brought that up is it becomes a family. So they feel like I'm a part of a
Yeah.
community. They'll ask questions, and another person in the community will answer that. the reason I bring all that up is that's probably why we hear from people openly and more vulnerable than normal.
Yeah.
Meaning, if you were just doing a one-off program that somebody signed up for, they might not tell you all all the
Yeah.
troubles they're dealing with. But what we hear the most is, well, that's easy for so and so. That's easy
Yeah.
for Corey. He's experienced in that, or he's already got this going for him, or he did stand-up comedy, which led to speaking, which made him. And they don't realize when I
Or he's
first,
connected. He's got influence.
yeah, I got
I don't
influence.
have any of that. I have no connections. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah,
hear that
and
a
I
lot.
always tell people, because there are some people truly that start with that. Maybe their father was in life insurance and they gave them the book of business. There are those
Yeah.
things, or they
Yeah.
come from a fluent family. I was raised by a single mother. I get a 49+1 in one of my high school years that allowed me to graduate. So I always say I legally graduated, but I technically didn't. So I wasn't that person that was given those things, meaning I started exactly where they are, or maybe further behind. When it comes to stand up, by the way, my first shows, I almost fell off the stage. I was covered in sweat. I bombed. So the point of that is that I find a lot of people feel I could never do what you do, or I don't have it in me to become that person. And I'm like, if you could only see the person here, the way he started, because he didn't have it in to become that person either. But the answer to the question is, I think it's mostly self-doubt and self-confidence. That's why I think most people don't take the step, is they don't think they're worth it. They don't think they could reach it. They don't think they could become that they're seeing out there. Like, I believe firmly anybody could become the next Gary Vee. For those that know Gary Vee, he's at a very high level. And Gary Vee walks out and does talks dropping F-bombs and wearing shirts with
I was
mustard.
just gonna say, and yeah, and he has the freedom to drop anything he wants, and we're all just like,
Yeah, and
because
I'm
it's
not
so
just saying,
true, it's so raw, it's so authentic. You just know it's so connected. And I always tell people that work with me, listen, I'm gonna drop an F bomb every now and then. If you don't dig it, I'm sorry, but it's part of who I am. I won't do it on my podcast because they'll probably, I don't know, maybe they'll delete me. I don't know, but
well,
I
or
do.
they
Yeah, I love that about him. Yeah.
And I will say, like Gary Vee, when I say that, when I say anybody can become Gary Vee, I don't mean that anybody can rise to the level he did, because the truth is, if so, we know how many experts there are in the world, influencers. If they could all be Gary Vee, they would be, or maybe not. I always say, don't try to be the next Gary Vee, be the first you. But what I mean when I say you could be there, you could become a Gary Vee, what I mean is you could be influencing people in a similar way. You could be impacting lives. And it doesn't mean you're going to impact millions. But at the
Yeah.
same time, if you wanted to put in the like we talked about earlier, souls in the shoes walking work, you might be able to become the next Gary Vee. What people don't see with Gary Vee, they thought he was an overnight success, is that
Yeah.
dude was doing forums at 4 a.m, wine forums, talking to people at 4 a.m, building his base while everybody else was sleeping.
Mm.
And so Eric Thomas is a great speaker. He always says, you want my life, but you don't want my grind.
Yeah. I love
So
that.
you could become Gary Vee on the surface in terms of being an influencer, impacting lives, showing up, being authentic, because Gary's 100% authentic if he's
Mm.
anything. You could be
Yeah.
all those things. You might not have best-selling books like Gary, but you could be those things and then see where it leads. But I think people don't even think they could do what Gary Vee's doing, and I believe they could.
Right. So I often say you're not afraid of the failure. You perhaps you're afraid of the success, the expansion. You can't hold space for that vastness of being out there because it's a lot. It's a lot. I think that it's stepping over that terror barrier. So that being said, and you working with some of the best and most famous people in the world, what do you find is the common thread that you see over and over again that they have to overcome?
So, I mean, well, this one, I think it's probably an overcome answer. And we talked earlier that I have a book called The Enlightened Passenger. One of the chapters in this
Yeah.
book is dedicated to it. It's the gist of the chapter is making no your new mantra. And so I find that it's not
Mm.
all the way through, but a vast majority of us have a hard time saying no. So we say yes too easily. What I've noticed in interviewing so many thought leaders, when I first started, my grandfather always said, say yes to everything, and that's how you get ahead. Opportunities will come up. And
Yeah.
I didn't realize this the first day in it, but I realize now that my grandfather was correct and telling the truth for his circumstance. My
Yeah.
grandfather was a grade 3 education carpenter. So when he worked on a home, he'd work on for 3 months on that home. So if the client said, can you build us a shed, Eddie? He would say, sure, because then he would get more work and they would affirm because they say, Eddie's so flexible and easy to work with. It made sense for him to say yes. What I didn't realize is it's a bit different when you're managing multiple businesses or you're
Yeah.
managing multiple things. And so what I found is top level influencers say no. I got to figure out the exact number, but I'm going to say between 20 and 50 times more than the average person. So
Mm.
you said overcome, and that's a key thing because what I found is talking to some of them, I know that once you get on their inner circle, they say yes like crazy. Now, I say some of them, right? Some, no
No,
matter,
you're right.
I
You're
have
right.
people in my network that think the world of me, perhaps, and say they would do anything for me. But if I try to get somebody in an interview, they'd say, I can't do it, buddy. I'm too busy. Like, meaning there's some that will say no, no matter what. But
Yeah.
what I found is it's like of the influencers, there's some that say yes, but it's a small percentage. Then there's some that have people on their team that say no for them.
Yeah.
Then there's people that if you can get a hold of them, they'll say yes every time if you can reach them. And then
Yeah.
there's ones that'll say no because they know they need to no matter what. And of
Right.
course, that's like as far as personalities go, that's who people are. But having said that, the overcoming part is because the vast majority of those influencers, I believe, were yes people when they started, and they had
Yeah.
to start working their no muscle. Now, some of them, I firmly believe, it's not that they have learned how to say no. They've literally said, I need to hire people to say no for me. So
Yeah.
I think that I don't think Tony Robbins would have any problem saying no. I don't think he has the time to say no to all the requests. So he has
Yeah.
a whole infrastructure of a team, but I'm willing to bet you some of those things that are requested never reach Tony. They just
Yeah.
say this is not for Tony. So what I'm
Yeah.
getting at is he has a whole team to insulate him from saying no or yes. If you don't have that, which a lot of people starting don't, or a solo speaker doesn't, then you have to start working your no muscle if you're a yes person. And I mean, that for as far as strategy, how I usually tell people to start because it's not easy is pick the smallest, tiniest nose possible. So what does that mean?
Mm.
Well, an easy one would be if somebody's pitching you on LinkedIn that you never met, and
Mm.
you're not looking for the service or interested in anything with that, because it might be a great fit for you. But let's just say it's not. It should
Yeah.
be easy to say no to that person. Like you could just say, "Thank you so much. I so appreciate it, but it's not a fit for me at this time." You've just flexed your no muscle, but do it to ones where it's not going to hurt anything. You're not saying no to a best friend that's going to abandon you. Um,
Mm.
I don't want to rob too much time on the no part of things,
Mm.
but I will say there's even ways I've discovered to say no without burning bridges. Because I think, again, the biggest
Mm.
fear people have is if I say no, they'll be pissed at me. By the way, I say no often, and I still struggle with this. If the right person catches me at the wrong time, I'm like, well, how much time is it going to take? Oh, well, maybe, yeah. And then I get
Yep.
sucked into
Yep.
saying yes. So
Yeah.
nobody wants to be viewed as the bad person, or most people don't. So
Yeah.
again, I think you have to start working your no muscle earlier and then figure out a way to say no. I mean, one way to say no, Dana, could be simply to have an autoresponder on your email. Like then you're not saying it yourself, but say, thanks. And we see it. Like if you reach out to
Yeah.
Tim Ferriss, you're going to get an auto reply that says, I would love to reply to everybody, but I can't. So my team does this, this. Here's the way if you want to reach out about this, reach out about this. He's basically saying, no, but
Well,
I
it's
love
kind of vetting and yeah, and if you're going to take the extra mile, you can go. Yeah, I like that. I like that. In a world where we live that so there's so much overwhelm with so much information coming. I couldn't do this alone. I have a team just answering. I couldn't show up to it all. And I am a yes person, but I said no a lot this year. And I'm wondering, I'm going to give you this example and tell me if I don't know if it was right or wrong. I tried to stay out of the right or wrong. I just felt I needed to say no, but it was speaking at a great event. But they weren't going to pay me, and the hotel was enormously expensive. And I thought, this is going to be like another 7,000. Is it worth the great people were there? But I was also really the time frame was in between other events. And I mean, it was just a crazy year. And I thought, I got to say no because I at least need my expenses covered. I want to be there. And as a soul sister, I'm going to say yes to you, but I need this. And that wasn't accommodated. So I said no. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a great question. And in fact, I don't know when I'm going to do it, but I keep teasing the idea that I'm going to do a TED talk called A Year of No's. There was
Ah,
a great talk by, I think it's Shonda Rhimes, A Year of Yeses, and she put a book together. And
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah,
what about
yeah,
the opposite? Everybody's always says, say yes, but what about
yeah.
no? And so I thought that'd be a cool book. And at some point I may do that. My fifth TED talk, the video didn't air. And I heard that TEDx weren't happy with their video quality and a bunch of other things. So I think
Mhm.
it's never going to air. And it was
Ooh,
about going on a news detox. And I think that's an important message. So I might do that one before I do the year of no's. That's just a side note.
yeah.
This is a mental reminder for me later on when I listen to the
I
interview.
like that. I
That
like that. A news detox. I say an overwhelmed detox of there's so much coming at us.
Yeah, and honestly, even saying no is a way to detox. When you say no to all the things you would normally
Yeah.
say yes to. But my and not to go into I will come back to your answer about what you said no to. But I will say quickly, what actually started that whole idea of the news detox was my mother was diagnosed with cervical cancer, and she's still alive. That was 18 plus years ago.
Mhm.
And whenever she went to see the doctor at the first appointment, he wrote her a prescription. She didn't read it. She got to the car, and it said she opened the prescription. It was on an actual authentic doctor notepad, and it said don't watch or read the news. And so the next time she
Mm.
went to see them, she said, "What does that mean?" And he said, "Well, I've noticed the people that don't watch or read the news have the best chance of battling cancer as my patients." And so I said to my mom when we left there, "Why don't we go on a news detox together?" And I'd say 18. I don't know. I'll have to ask her how many years ago it was, but whatever it was, let's say it's 20 years. I went on a news detox that day, and I'd never consumed again. So, but my point is that's where the news detox comes in. And of course, in the book, I talk about the news detox as well.
Could you show the book again, the cover,
Yeah,
so everyone who's looking, yeah, The Enlightened Passenger. I think it's a worthwhile book to read. I like what you're talking about in here, like the detox, things that we take for granted. We turn on the habit, and you're restructuring your habits. You're stacking new habits. Not going to do, and I'm not incorporating it back in. Imagine all that free
absolutely.
time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say, if you say every time you say yes, you're saying no to something else. But I
Mm,
want to I want to tackle what you said, and I will say we can circle back to it if you want. But the book itself is like a little pocket book, and it's a fictional parable, like The Alchemist or Celestine Prophecy.
yeah.
Just for people to see it, just if they're wondering what type of book it is. But as far as what you said no to, like I've run into this a lot. I struggle with this often. Like there's more opportunities as you get busier. Now, when you first start, you're like, I will beg for an opportunity. Like you
Yeah.
put the little sign up, we'll beg for opportunity. But now once you get busier, it's like, what do I say no to? Because there's so many. And like I have a chance right now to have our show on a really major network, but it's a network that then sends it out to the big networks. So it's like
Mm,
their network, but you get on their network, and then you get on the small ones they guarantee, but then they send it to the big ones, and it's a crapshoot. And I really love the idea. And I actually think revenue wise, we would make more money than it would cost us to do it because we can sell sponsorships and stuff.
mm,
But the whole reason I wanted to do it was to be in the big platforms. So that when we're doing our live events, we could sell sponsors and we could say to the event sponsors, we can also air you. When the talk airs, you'll get on Amazon, let's say. But they said to me, of course, well, Amazon, you can't do ads that way because it's Amazon's property. And so then they said, but we can't guarantee you we'll get you on Amazon. But now they're still pitching me. Well, it's a great opportunity, but I'm pretty certain it's going to be a no because it doesn't feel right yet. And so, and then
mm.
I also was going to go to do to the main TED conference this year in Vancouver. Now it's pricey. A lot of people probably don't know, but TED to go to the main TED conference, not TEDx, is like about 15 to 30,000 US for 3 days or for a week actually. Um, and somebody sent me a link and said they had like a different level, and it was like a sponsored level. It was like 700, 7,000. And I was like, ooh, I might want to do that. Anyway, I decided no. And that's a big no because now that means if I don't go this year, it's like 18 months from now. And so
Right.
I say no to those things not lightly, but and those ones especially because they hit all five of my mission statement. And the key thing is
Yeah.
what you just said about that talk. That talk you mentioned would hit at least four of the five of my mission statement. So that's where it gets tricky on the no, meaning like you're going to be in front of a lot of big influencers. It's at a great event at a really swanky hotel. Probably going to get in front of a good audience.
Yeah.
That stuff is all part of that's where it gets harder to say no because those are all pieces of my mission
And
statement.
I wanted to support them. My heart was so connected to saying yes to them. And I
And again,
hate to, yeah, yeah,
and at the end of the day, they're not telling you to spend any money. It's just the cost to go there and everything is going to cost you.
yeah,
Like they're not even saying it's going to cost. Like we want you to pay this. So it's not even like they're doing anything wrong. They're just saying, "Hey, come and speak at our
yeah,
event."
yeah.
So the answer to your question, as far as what do I think about saying no to it, I say no to those opportunities often, and usually what I try to figure out is what's going to be the end result and
Mhm,
what else could I do during that time in comparison. So I kind of like try
mhm,
to say like if I go do this 3 day event and travel away from my family, so I also have to factor in having two young kids,
yeah,
and my wife right now, don't mean to go in this direction, but she's going through chemo. So if I go on the road to do a talk, and she would send me on the road to do a talk because I will say she's on her third round and she's like chipper and jumping around. It's the most odd thing I've ever seen. So I could go do a talk, but I have to think I'm leaving her, and if she does get sick, then I'm leaving her and having somebody else watch her. With the two kids, I'm leaving them, and they're missing daddy time for 4 or 5 days. So I actually put a value on that. So in other
Yeah.
words, if I'm going away, I have to factor that. So if I'm going to go away, the only trip I did since she was diagnosed was I went to actually do an event in New York. Was a Times Square, being on the Times Square billboard. That's kind of a
Mhm.
big deal. And she wanted me to go do that for that reason. And then I was going to do Amberly, our mutual friend's interview in her studio. Like, so we did it all in like 5 days. I did the whole trip.
You
And
did
she
the
pushed me to do that. I canceled the rest, but she pushed me. What I'm saying is, I'm very cautious about what I say yes and no to. So that
Yeah.
talk that you're talking about, I probably would have said no to that because it's not only about the money, but again, I
No.
think about impact and I think about, okay, well, I could stay at my office and maybe get a booking virtually that I reach the same amount of people.
Right.
So it's not easy to say no to one that fits, that hits all the marks. But I
Yeah.
will say this, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. If that same opportunity was the exact same, but they said we're going to pay you $10,000 too, so you're getting paid for your time to go and everything, would that change it from a no to a yes, do you think?
Oh, the time frame was still really tight, and there were other opportunities that were, it could have been more, it would have made the yes easier. It wasn't about the money, but it was
Yeah.
also about where I was at during the part of the year. Felt like I was, taking time off to write the book. I was behind. I was traveling nonstop. So I think it was more about mental fatigue. I wanted to do it, but I felt really stretched. And you always want to show up your best. You don't want to just show up. You want to show up and really deliver. And I felt a little murky, if I'm
Well, and
being
I will
honest. If I'm
add,
being honest,
yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I will add, just so people understand when I ask that question, the context that for the bulk of my life and career, I won't say from the early couple of years, I needed to make money to eat because I was leaving
yeah,
a really highly lucrative software career that was guaranteed money to go straight commission in speaking, because you're straight
yeah,
commission really because you only get paid when you get booked. I want to clarify when I asked that question, it wasn't solely because, oh, well, we would do it for the money. It's
yeah,
also the fact that people don't necessarily often think about is when you create abundance, when you go out and do that talk, and if there, let's say you do get X amount for the talk, that's also money that you can do good with. Like with us
yeah,
with Blue Talks, honestly, that
yeah,
if I did one talk for 15 or 20, I can hire two VAs for the entire year. So I'm giving them income. And then they're also impacting the people they reach. So I want people to
yeah,
understand when I say money, I think abundance. Like I think
yeah,
circulation, like the more abundance that I possibly create, like we have 20 people on our team with Blue Talks at fractional and close to full time. And I think of how much money we're spending every year. Plus, we book
yeah.
universities, how much money we're giving them each year.
Universe, yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's not about let's get Corey a bunch of money. It's about
yeah,
literally how can we circulate this to create good for everybody. So I only said that about if you were
mm,
getting the money, it's a bit different because then you can choose how you recirculate it.
yeah.
But if you're paying to go there and do everything else and you spend 10,000, yes, it's still circulating, but you have less control over it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think timing is important too, to pay attention. Whereas before in the beginning, when all these people want to speak and they're just going to make it happen, I have to use that discernment now. Does I'd love to be there, but I also know that I'm sacrificing, and I also if I what's so interesting when I did that, another huge opportunity opened up. And I ended up doing VIPs. I created and generated 10 times that amount of money in 1 month, even the money you said, because I stayed very present with my path that was probably the one I needed to take. And usually I'm very aligned with yes, 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 but I don't even know why I negotiated. That is, thank you for that insight, because I was struggling still with, I wish I could have shown up and said yes. And because no is not easy, especially when you want to show up for people. I have people show up on the podcast saying, I say no to all podcasts. I don't know why I said yes to you. And I'm like, well, I'm so grateful you did. I'm so grateful you did. But I will
Well,
find that way of leaving messages and finding them so I can connect with them and say, this is why I want you here. This is why I need you here. I'm pretty selective on the energies that I call in, because the message I want is on a deeper, soulful, connective level. And I see it. And I think there they are. And I'll wait.
one thing I'll add too to that, Dana, is that I actually where so what I still say, like I say yes sometimes whenever it would normally be a no. And a
Mhm.
good example, because I think also I don't want to ever say it depends on the person because I don't want somebody to think when I said no to them it was
No.
who they were.
Yeah,
Having said
exactly.
that, sometimes like if it's your wife, you might say yes easier than you might to a stranger. Like that's just logical, I think. And so I had this client, and in a nutshell, I was heading to New York. This was recent, in fact, and I was asked to do an interview with. The funny part is the interview never ended up happening, but I was asked to do an interview with these guys called the Trailer Park Boys. I don't know if you ever heard of them, but they're from
I think I
Canada,
just
but
recently just heard about them. That's
well,
crazy.
their movie is actually in theaters now, so it might be because of that. But
Yeah.
it's global. Like their show airs in the U.S., Canada, England. I went to England and I went to the show by one of the guys, and it was sold out. And they were singing his name and saying all the catchphrases from the movie. And then Billy Bob Thornton was the headliner, and they left before he showed up. Like it was really weird. So anyway, the Trailer Park Boys were doing the premiere of the movie in Times Square, and I was going to be in New York, and so I was planning to interview them. Well, the problem was that it was a premiere, but you needed to buy a show ticket to be in the premiere because you watch the movie and then they come out basically.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, I need to buy a ticket. The problem, which I didn't realize until the time, is how hard it is, i.e., impossible, meaning literally impossible, to buy a ticket as a Canadian to buy a ticket on AMC theaters. It
Oh,
will not
really?
like literally. I messaged them and they said, no, you can't. It's impossible. You can't even use a credit card. Like, in other words,
Wow.
shouldn't Visa and MasterCard be worldwide? But it won't let you because it sees where your IP address is and if you have a zip code. And usually I can, because I grew up in Canada, I'm in the US more than I'm in Canada. But if I go to a gas tank and I want to just use my card, because I don't have a zip code, what I do is I use the three
Mm.
numbers in my postal code and then I add 00. And it
Oh,
works.
really?
It knows it, but it wouldn't even let me bypass it that way. So I had no way to buy this $25 ticket to the show. And by the way, but the problem was I didn't want to risk when I got there if it was sold out. So I
Yeah.
went to one of my clients and said, "Hey, is there any chance? I know this is a big ask and a weird ask." And then she actually made me confirm three different ways it was really me,
Yeah.
and not somebody
Yeah.
trying to get her to
Yeah.
send the money. And I said, "Look, I'll send you the money beforehand via
Yeah.
PayPal." Like once she knew it was me for sure. Anyway, you wouldn't believe it. The work it took her. I bet you it took her 5 hours.
Oh, well, I'm going to tell you this is a real story because I have an employee in Canada. I can't Zelly her. She has problems using my credit. It's crazy. And I'm like, at first I'm like, what is going on? What is going on here? But oh yeah, no, everything is we've
Yeah,
got
we
yeah,
don't have
yeah.
Zelly or Venmo. We only have PayPal.
Oh
And
yes, I know.
and wise we have. But I mean, but the weird part to me is to buy a friggin' movie ticket. Like it's a
Yeah.
retail store basically.
Yeah.
Anyway, so but it took her almost 5 hours to figure out how to buy a ticket. Like, because now that's all online and there's no support. Anyway, make a long story short, she went through that, bought the ticket. And I told her, like, after the first hour, I said, don't worry about it. Give up. I don't want you to keep spending this time.
She wasn't
But
going to give up.
pursued and persistent. And so the other day she messaged and said, is there any way you and Heidi on our team would do an endorsement on our website? And we've seen her speak, and I wouldn't make up an endorsement, but I like her talk and everything else. My
Yeah.
point is that's something these days I don't have a lot of time to be able to do. Like I get asked to do forwards of books. They're as hard as writing a full book. I don't have time to do those things. But how can I say no to somebody who asked me for an endorsement that spent 5 hours to buy me a friggin' movie ticket? That's my point. I still kind of look and say, what can I fit in? And even if I can't fit in, will I force to fit in?
Right. Love that. I love that. I love that you balanced it out and said, hey, I don't feel obligated, but I'm grateful and I'm going to show up and I'm going to do this because what you did is not only a value to me, but you went the extra mile for me. And that I value in my life. So I love that heart connection there. What is it? I know we're running out of time. What is it you would like to share with this audience that perhaps I haven't asked you that you know is wise and full of wisdom that they need to know from Corey?
It's always tough, kind of something like that up really quickly because there's so many directions I could go. Like the Blue Talk side, I could go if we were talking about what I would share if somebody wants to share their message with the world. They want to be an expert, they want to impact lives from stages. That's a different thing than I would say than if I'm talking about something like, this book.
Yeah.
So
What a
I'll leave.
division.
Yeah, it depends on the direction I go and what part of my life. But I would say if I go with the book, and it's just something that I think is actually, I'll give you two quick ones really quick. One is there's a chapter in the book called The Mayfly. And what that's related to is the literal mayfly, like the little fly that's like a fruit fly or whatever. The mayfly, I didn't know this about them, but I watched an episode of Everybody Loves Raymond. And the older brother, Robert, I forget what the context was, but he basically said, live your life to the fullest because whatever. And then something about the mayfly. And I'm like, I'm always fascinated by things. So I'm like, what does he mean about the mayfly? So I Googled it and I found out a male mayfly lives 24 hours and then
Mm.
dies. A female mayfly only lives 5 to 7 minutes, long enough to make another mayfly and die. And
Wow.
so I didn't want to go to the use the seven as the example because it's too short a time. But I said basically my story with the mayfly is how would you live your life today if you had as much time left as the mayfly, 24 hours. And then what I said in the book is, and I walk people through how to write your ideal day. We only have 24 hours. What would you do? And then when you do that enough times, and each day is probably going to be different, but when you do that enough times, you start to identify what an ideal day is. And I find you start living your ideal day every day. So live like the mayfly is one message. And the
Mm.
other quick one is around a thing called synchronicity, which people may have know of as, well, coincidences. But I always say to people, because if they have a trouble with the idea of a synchronicity, I always say, but they believe in coincidence, I always say, think of it then as a meaningful coincidence or a mysterious coincidence, like a
Mm.
coincidence that has meaning in that moment. And so there's
Mm.
really, at the end of the day, Dana, like synchronicities could be as simple as I bought a car and now I see it everywhere. And I
Yeah.
always say the argument to not the argument to it, but which of the two is it? And I don't know the answer. Is it that you bought the car so now you see it more often because you bought it, or is
Mm.
it that there's more of them now? It's probably not. There's not more of them on the road. The same amount
Yeah.
were sold, but I think is it aware? Is you're aware of it now because you have the car and now you're paying attention, or are now the synchronicity? Are you driving by more of them? Are you driving those paths? I think it's more likely you notice them now then the path
Mm.
has changed or more cars are driving by you. I think it's probably just that you now notice it. It's what you pay attention to grows, as they say.
Mm.
So synchronicity is something that has transformed my entire life. And what do I mean by that? It's that every day now, it never used to be this way, I have these meaningful coincidences and I lean into them. So
Mm.
I feel that if you recognize that you've had this coincidence, and tell the universe, yes, thank you. However, you say thank you get more of them. So, one of my ways to do that is I have a synchronicity journal. So, when I have these meaningful
Mm.
coincidences, I write them down. And it can be I mean, some of them are very simple, like uh, in the wrestling world, just to give a random example, a friend was visiting us and we got talking about wrestling. And he brought up Roddy Piper, a wrestler from the 80s that wore a kilt. And then, lo and behold, on my Facebook later on that day, a picture of Roddy Piper comes up, who I haven't seen
Yeah.
visually in probably 5 years. And so there's those ones, but then there's the big ones. So, for example, I'll give you a really big one. Is I was interviewing this musician. The deal was that I was supposed to interview this UFC fighter, and he gave me the wrong address for his office. And then once we finally realized that, he sent me in the right direction. And when I was 5 minutes away, he sent me a message that said, "Sorry, bail. The champ had to bail." So my meeting got canceled. I was in Miami. I'm like, I'm going to go to the Miami beach and make lemonade. And I was on my way there and I got another ding on my phone. I thought maybe I should check it. It could be him. It wasn't. It was my friend Tiffany. And she said, "Corey, remember that producer that I told you about that was from Miami that I wanted you to interview, but he's now in Toronto?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, he moved back to Miami. Aren't you in Miami this weekend?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Would you want to interview him?" And I said, "Yeah, but have you talked to him?" She goes, "Not yet." She reached out to him and my, of course, meeting had gotten canceled, my first one. Well, he reached out to her, she reached out to him, and he said, "Well, Tiff, I had three things, but they all got canceled." "Yeah, let's do it." So both of our days got canceled. So I said, "But we don't have anywhere to record this interview." He said, "Would a music studio work?" And I'm like, "I'm a musician. Of course it would." So we ended up doing the interview at a place called the Miami Hit Factory. And it's like the iconic place. When he actually recorded for Beyonce, Jay-Z, Timbaland, Justin Timberlake, Michael Jackson, and he was pointing like Madonna was there when she said this. So it was iconic. But at the end of
Yeah.
the interview, the reason I bring this up, Dana, it was a 4 hours we hung out. Two was the interview, two was hanging out. At the end
Mhm.
of it, he said, "Corey, who can I connect you with for this project?" And I said, "Dude, we just met. I don't want to use that relationship." And he goes, "No, no, who can I?" And I said, "You know what? If you think of somebody, you let me know." So when I got back to my hotel, I finally checked my phone and I had messages from him. And he said, "How about Les Brown and Bob Proctor?" I said, "Yeah, that'll work." Anyway, so he sent messages to each of them, and their reply was anything for him. Now, I never share his name because I don't know if he wants his name shared because other people might
Yeah.
ask for the connection. But the
I
point is,
love that you yeah.
but
Yeah,
the
I love
point
that.
is, um, because whenever that one thing was canceled, I didn't go to the beach. I didn't say, no, I'm pissed off, I'm going to the beach. I
Yeah.
leaned, they said, why is Tiffany reaching out to me and saying he's in town now? And by the way, him and I are buddies. Like I messaged him over the holidays, and it's pretty cool. What he does when he goes away is he throws his phone in the closet. He doesn't take it with him.
I
So you
love that.
might not hear from him for 3 weeks. And when he's away, he's away. And so I know, like, if he's not replying, that's why. So I messaged him before Christmas, and he just messaged me 2 days ago. Hey, buddy, I'm back for the new year. What's up? My point is, we're friends and everything. And none of that would have happened if I didn't lean into that synchronicity. So to
Yeah.
me, those are meaningful coincidences that are happening to us all the time that we're not listening to. So I know that was a long answer, but I would tell people to start paying attention to the coincidences that are happening and lean into them. Go with your gut. Some of them may mean nothing. Some of them may mean big things. But I could literally sit here for an hour of us doing interview and rhyme off synchronicity after synchronicity and what
Yeah.
they led to. So if you think about that one person that I mentioned, since then we brought him in for 2 live events. He became our keynote. I did it for next to nothing because we're close. And then he got me connections with Bob Proctor and Les Brown. I've interviewed Les 7 times since then. I interviewed Bob before his passing. And by the
Yeah.
way, we just put out a book and we got permission because he had signed a release, but I got his son and his widow to approve it. We actually did a book with Bob as the featured guest, and I formatted my interview as the thing. So the 25 people in the book got to say they co-authored a book with the late Bob Proctor. Everything I just told you about wouldn't have happened if I wouldn't have leaned into that one coincidence. That's the
Well, I
power.
call them signs, but that your it's genius the way you say me because I live my life this way. But it's so crazy that you just said Bob Proctor. Two people that I've interviewed for podcasts said, "Do you know the late Bob Proctor?" And I'm like, and you just said, and I'm like, that's 3 times in one day. So what is yeah, they're trained by they're this is the work they do in the world based on Bob Proctor's work. And I'm like, well, yes, I do know. And and then you just said that. And I'm like, so there's being. I always think of 3 times as being what's the connection here? Yeah, that's
Now,
powerful.
before they mention it, just so I understand too, did you know Bob Proctor was? Or was this
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
new?
Oh
Okay.
no, I did. I
Okay.
did. I
So for
did. Yeah.
me, when I look, and so here's the thing. I mean, could be a whole philosophical conversation in the sense that people always say, this is the way it works. This is what the Bible says. I think it's what you believe is true.
Mm,
So, in other words,
yeah.
what you believe the synchronicity is about is true.
Yes.
So, I could say it's one thing, you could say it's another.
Yeah.
If Bob came up 3 times for me, I would either say, okay, I got to be on alert for something that, like maybe it's a course that's coming up by Bob's team, or
Mhm.
maybe it means I need to go check out Bob's website and see if there's a course on there that's right for me. So I just kind of try to read what it means to me. But to me, it's
Yeah.
like getting a reading from an oracle or a psychic. You assign what meaning you're going to assign to it. Some of
Yeah.
them I think are like I just was reading. I had a reading done before I got together with my wife, and then shortly after. We were only 3 weeks into the relationship, and just to give you an example of it's this one, you don't have to read into it. She said, "I see you with somebody with an L in her name." Now, my wife's name is Shelley. But
Mhm.
that part you could say, okay, well, L is probably in 20% of names or whatever. But then
So
she
there's
said,
two L's there. Yeah. There's two
yeah,
L's in jelly. Yeah.
yeah, well, and the other side, well, and she said prominent L. We have it all written down. But the other thing she said, but I see you've been busy with J and K. It looks like you're going through the alphabet. And the two girls that I seen before Shelly, Janet and Carrie with a K.
Mm.
Like only two ones, the only two, and both their first initials, and she nailed them both. Like you
Yeah.
could go, okay, well, I'm just reading into that, but I mean, to me, that's pretty
I don't
dead
know
to
if you know that
rights.
about me, but I do readings in my coaching now, but being a natural, being born psychic, being gifted this and not knowing where it fit my world now, I give people signs, I hear it, I give it to them, use it however you see fit, but you get to decipher what that means to you. And there's certain things I stay away from. Life, death, certain things, even if I see it. But I go ahead and I see and I unpack and I'm like, oh, isn't that interesting? And you have an aunt that just showed up. Would you like to talk to her? She looks pretty feisty, and it supports, I think, the journey that I'm on. But I love that you brought that up because some people really see letters, and I love that. And you know what? You pulled it in. You're like accurate, 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 accurate. And sometimes people say, that's not accurate at all. And then an hour later, well, you know what? I was totally blocked there, totally accurate, absolutely connected. And I'm like, yeah, well, you know what? It's however you interpret and whatever you're connected to.
And
Love
I
this
would say
conversation. Yeah.
also go back to it too, Dana. Like if you ever moved from, like you might think that's not accurate at all, even the future stuff. And then a year from now, you're like, you look back and you're like, holy
Yeah.
crap, it was dead on. Like I had a guy tell me I was going to move,
Yeah.
and my girlfriend at the time was cheating on me. and she was there, and he didn't know it was her. She freaked out. Anyway, I found out later on she was cheating with my friend, and I moved. And none of that, like I was like, I'm not moving. And so I would
Yeah.
have said he was
Yeah.
completely out to lunch. The only other thing I'll tell you, which tells you how precise this one lady was, we call her Oracle Sue. Um,
Love it.
actually said, I picture you with this lady in Sedona on horseback. And here's the catch, the kicker. I said, what's Sedona? I didn't even know what it was. 4 months later, Shelly and I decided to move across the country. We go through 16 states. And for my 40th birthday, without her knowing Sue said that, she bought me horseback riding lessons in Sedona.
Now that kind of, I mean, I look at that as so guided and so accurate. And I love that. I love the accuracy, but I also love the fact that she gave you bits and pieces of, as I see it, colors and images and places. And, I think that I recently did something live, and she's a big name, and she's not accurate at all. Nope, nope, nope. I'm not doing my birthday there. I don't see. Nope. It's snowing in New Mexico this time, and my birthday, and I'm like, no, I see you on the coast, green. I see the ocean. That's where I see your. I'm. Nope, nope, not going to happen. Well, she just spent her birthday. She just messaged. Well, I got invited, and this person hosted, and I'm like, well, I can't help what I see. I see what I see. What I see. I would love to have it fit into the snowy New Mexico winter, but I don't see that. And I trust myself that, whatever I see, I see. So I love the fact that you call her, what did you call her? Truthful Sue or
Oracle Sue.
Oracle Sue. I love that. I love that.
We're still good friends with her. And the only thing I'll say, and I'm sure she'd be okay with me saying that, is she doesn't do readings as often. And I've found, and I've told her about that.
Yeah.
It drained her energy, and I don't think her readings aren't the same as they once were. When we first
Mm.
met her, like she did 4 readings for me over the course of 3 years at every single thing. And now it's a lot more general. So I don't
Yeah.
know what
It ebbs
happened,
and,
but
yeah. Well, it
I
ebbs
think
and
it's all
flows,
energy.
I think.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that you're right. It takes an enormous amount of energy. So my readings, I don't do anymore. There's a backlog of 3 years. I'm not doing them, but I will incorporate what I see in my coaching, which makes it very unique. And that way I can manage the energy, because going down that energetic, there's no getting back. I can't back out. And
No.
and I don't know where I'm going, and I'm all over the place. And I'm like, okay. And I'm living in two worlds. So there's two conversations I'm having continually. So now I found a way it works for me. Whereas before, I was drained a lot. I was exhausted, and I thought, I can't maintain this. And it's a constant strain on me
Yeah.
of accuracy, especially when someone says that's not true, and I'm like, okay, I'm not invested in it, but I'm just telling you what I see. But
Get back
yeah,
to me in 3 months.
what's that?
That's what I would say to them, get back to me in 3 months. You let
Yeah,
me
get
know.
back to me. Yeah, I love that. What a great conversation. What an expansive conversation. I'm so grateful for you. I can't wait to I'm going to immediately grab the book, because I can feel there's just nuggets throughout the book. But if I had to ask you one final question, and we're right at the hour, and I know we both, what feels like love to you, Corey, in your life right now? What feels like love overall in your life? You can do anything, work, life.
You know what? For me, this again, probably maybe a cop it, but I'm going to go with my first instinct. Is to me, life feels like love. So what I mean by that is the way I'm living my life today feels like love. So everything
Mhm.
I do is rooted in passion and purpose, which I believe is rooted in love. I
Mhm.
have my wife and I have been together. We're just about to celebrate 10 years, and we're literally,
Oh,
which I know is
congratulations.
rare. We're just as happy 10 years later as we were in day one.
Love
Um,
that.
we have 2 kids that can be handfuls, and one's a very big empath, and he feels a lot, and we then feel a lot. It's not easy, but even working with him feels like love, because when I was growing up, they would just tell a kid stop crying and sit in the corner, and so life feels like love for me, because even everything I spend my time doing, we're helping people impact the world. Like that's all love to me. And I said one time in a quote in on Facebook, I said, regardless of what your question is, in my belief, the answer is always love. So everything feels like love to me.
I love I love that. But how can people find you? Where's the easiest way they can connect with you?
Well, we mentioned earlier, if people want more insight, like I started at the
Yeah,
beginning about Blue Talks and how to
right.
become an influencer and all that stuff, I would send them to that website I mentioned earlier, bluetalksnu.com. If they want to get the book, The Enlightened Passenger, right now, if you get it, and by the way, if you want, you're going to get it, this is the place to go. Go to thisisthebook.com. So
This
this
is the
is
book.com.
book.com, because when you go there, it'll still send you to buy it off Amazon or wherever, but you come back with the order number and it gives you 5 cool bonuses. So why not?
Ooh, oh, I love
So
that.
go to thisisthebook.com. And then otherwise than that, I would just say, just search my name. It's pretty easy to find, Corey Poirier. It's a unique name. So those are the two websites. And otherwise than that, just search my name and you can track me down.
And we're going to have all those websites, all that information provided too. So yeah, this was a great conversation. I could talk to you for another hour or
Likewise.
longer. Yeah.
Well, and you know what? We're probably going to, because I'm planning to have you on my show very soon too.
Oh, I'm stoked. Are you wanting a reading? Is that what you're?
That wasn't my plan at all, but you know what? I probably won't say no.
Corey,
Well,
I'm
let's
sending you out. I'm also sending your wife so much love and protection there and prayers. I'm sending so much energy there. The minute you said it, I'm just coverage, coverage of prayers. Yeah,
thank you so much. I appreciate you, Dana. And
whatever
yeah,
you need
to be continued.
to be continued. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you so much. Talk more
So
soon.
grateful of you.
Bye
Bye
bye.
for now.